Well, hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Well, I'm really excited about the chat that we're going to have today because, of course, there is a bill in New Hampshire that is all about us seceding from the Union and creating what I want to call the autonomous zone of New Hampshire. Perhaps we can come up with a name in the course of this live stream. But I'm thrilled to be joined today by Elliot Axelman, who lives with his wife, Kate, in southern New Hampshire, not that far away from me. Though raised as a conservative, Alou became increasingly libertarian as he learned more about how the government operates. As he becomes more involved in political analysis through his writing, podcasts, videos, and activism, Alou evolved into a voluntarist, which means that he totally rejects the use of force against peaceful people, even by government agents. Outside of his full-time job in emergency medicine and his full-time labor of love supporting freedom, Alou enjoys powerlifting, boxing, all sorts of awesome stuff. He is also the founder, owner, director, and editor-in-chief of LibertyBlock.com, which I definitely recommend everyone check out. He has written a whole bunch of books, including The Blueprint for Liberty, Corona-Fascism, The Progressive Solution, and is an author with Defiance Press and Publishing. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of the amazing books he's written. Alou, welcome to the channel. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited.
No, I'm really excited. And, just for people to have a little bit of context, how we kind of met was there was a Liberty Creators kind of summit in New Hampshire. And, it was all about coming and bringing, big ideas for liberty. And so there was lots of, conversation and brainstorming. And you got up and you were like, I want to talk about secession. And in my head, I was like probably 3 beers in at this point. I was like, that's stupid. That's never going to happen. But you spoke about it with such passion and you made such good points that by the end of it, I was like, all right, let's secede. Let's do it. I'm ready to go. So let's talk about secession because, of course, we have this bill in New Hampshire that is putting the idea out there, seeing if we can get a vote on it. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on?
Yeah, of course. In New Hampshire, there's a bill that was just proposed, and we're hoping to have 10 co-sponsors, which is the most you're allowed to have on a bill. We're already up to 8 or 9. It would put secession, so peaceful separation from D.C., totally severing all ties with D.C. politicians. It would put it on the ballot next November for the people themselves to vote on. Right now, it would need to pass the House with 60% of the vote. It would need to pass the Senate with 60% of the vote. Does not need a signature from Dictator Sununu. And then it would go right to the ballot. So it would on the ballot, it would need 66% of the voters in November of 2022 to vote in favor of it. If all those things happen immediately, like that night, by the next morning, we would be a self-governing independent nation, never have to worry about federal government, DC politicians, federal laws, or taxes ever again.
So how realistic is this? Because it seems like a little bit of like a wide-eyed idea. Like are there any chances that this is actually going to end up on the ballot?
Yeah, 2 things. I'll say 2 things. One, I'll say betting odds, smart money says around 1 in a million chance it passes the House and Senate. Okay, that being said, I mean, I've heard from a dozen more reps in addition to the sponsors, which we're going to have 10. I've heard from dozens more they'll support the bill. But still, 60% means it needs every Republican in the House plus a few Democrats. So it's extremely difficult. That being said, like I have it in my article that I'll try to link here in the chat, I have 82, I think I'm up to 82 very powerful reasons why we should divorce DC politicians forever. And obviously I've written, 6 books about it now as well. So there are a lot of reasons. And thank God, Joe Biden, who actually is the biggest supporter of secession, because he makes the best case for secession. He speaks better than I could. I mean, he speaks worse than I could, but not really coherent. But he's making a great case for secession being the only solution we have every day. Since I started this stuff a few weeks ago, since Mike Sylvia, the prime sponsor, proposed the bill, every day, Biden or DC politicians do one more thing that enrages people. When this first next day, he banned imports of Russian ammo and guns. That pissed off a lot of my friends. I'm sure, a lot of my friends in New Hampshire are very big in guns and ammo, as am I. So, and we buy Russian ammo. That pissed off a lot of people. If we were independent, that would not be an issue. The next day, something else. Then the vaccine mandate. He said pretty much every employee, in the United States in a big company has to get the vaccine. The next day, something else. And then a few days ago, a few more scandals. The Afghanistan scandal dropped, then a bunch more. And then I think yesterday or 2 days ago, he nominated a Soviet university, Moscow University, Soviet communist Stalinist to be the controller of the currency for the United States. And she's an avowed communist. So every day, another thing. And I just keep adding to the list. We're at 82. We'll be at a few hundred soon. So there are so many reasons. So the momentum is all on our side. So when it gets to a vote, maybe the full vote of the House in January, February, March, the full vote of the House, by then, things might look so bad. Inflation, they might have to admit, is 10, 20, 50, 80% per year. Once they admit inflation is 80% per year, I think it could pass the House. So there are so many things happening. Like I said, Biden is the biggest one pushing this because people just want to get away from him.
Well, I think, I agree with you. I think that the Democrats are their own worst enemy in this regard. I think they double down, and the minute they go too far every single time. And then, we were already seeing people kind of turning away that maybe voted for Biden in November, were very excited to vote for Biden. Now they're like, what the hell is going on? It's absolutely insane. Now, I will say that the number one reason for me is I suspect my taxes are going to go up. I'm being incredibly selfish in this regard. We pay reasonably low taxes in New Hampshire. We don't have a state income tax. I don't like paying federal income tax. I don't want my taxes to go up. I was, and I think that if we seceded, I wouldn't have to pay federal income tax anymore. So that makes me very excited.
One of the biggest selling points, like practically speaking, practical, very simple. One of the things I tell people is, like you just said, do you want to save $20,000 to $30,000 per year? It's that simple.
Yes.
If we leave the union right away, no more federal income tax. I could write a whole book about the IRS and just what they want to do now. Obviously, under Obama, Lois Lerner, there was a big scandal of the IRS targeting conservative groups and not giving them tax exempt status and all that stuff. So the IRS has been weaponized against pro-freedom people, of course, and now they want to spend trillions of your tax dollars to hire 87,000 more IRS agents who are going to snoop on every single transaction in or out of $600 or more. And again, that's very little. And as inflation goes up, $600 will be like a few peanuts. So every single account will be totally 100% accessed, I believe, by the IRS. And you're paying for all of this as well. So the only way to get rid of the IRS is going to be independence. People say independence is impossible. You know what's even more impossible? What's less likely? Ted Cruz talking about abolishing the IRS. It's a talking point. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
As difficult or almost impossible, unlikely secession is, I think getting rid of the IRS is even less likely. So again, it's all these things. If we could solve a million issues with one thing, it's unlikely. But if we could do one thing, secede and solve a million issues, let's do it. Because getting rid of the IRS and the entire NFA and abolishing the ATF and the FBI, that's even less likely than secession, which solves all those issues in one shot.
I would also, frankly, like to get rid of the Department of Education. Would we be able to do that if we seceded?
Of course. Well, you'd no longer be attached to the Federal Department of Education, and all educational policy would come right from Concord with someone like Frank Edelblut, which is pretty pro-freedom. And again, even if we didn't have a good education department, you and I can go to Concord in a few minutes and talk to them about it, write emails. We can go yell in a committee hearing about it. Concord is a lot closer. And that's the second big point I make, practically speaking, for people. I ask them when they say secession's crazy, I say, okay, what is it crazy to say that Biden and Pelosi can run my life better than I can, or better than a few state reps in Concord can? I think every person I've ever spoken to about this says that they can run their life better. And if decisions have to be made by government agents, it should be made by people who are in Concord, who are people you and I know, normal human beings who are state reps and senators.
You can throw a rock and hit a state rep in New Hampshire. They're everywhere all the time. They're ubiquitous.
So decisions being made in Concord would be infinitely better in every single way than being made by DC politicians who, again, central planning doesn't work, obviously. We believe in a free market here and individualism and decentralization. But also, for so many reasons, do you want people like Biden, Clinton, Trump, Obama, Pelosi, Schumer, McConnell, them making decisions for you? Every person I've asked in my life says, I don't want those sociopathic, corrupt criminals, scumbags who don't care about me to be the ones making decisions for how I run my life. So localization, again, is very, very popular. People get afraid of leaving the union for other reasons. They think, well, the U.S. has a big military and, the dollar is so powerful. It's not, but people don't think about actual day-to-day decisions. And now that the federal government doesn't just do what they're supposed to do in the Constitution, they're supposed to only do very, very few, jobs, duties that they have in the Constitution, the enumerated powers and all that. They do everything. They control every single thing on my house, the electricity, the light bulbs, the toilet flushing, every single thing we do, everything we eat. I just learned the other day about the FDA food rules. Some states, including New Hampshire a few years ago, adopted the FDA's food regulations, which brings us into part of this whole massive thing where we can't have mushrooms unless we create licenses. You can't look for mushrooms or sell mushrooms or something because we adopted the FDA guidelines. All these things, almost everything you do in daily life is more controlled by DC politicians than even state and local level. Again, it's a misconception, and that's why I write these books and articles. People think, yeah, the federal government does big, broad things in foreign policy and Congress and taxation and stuff, but the local things are at a local level. That's not necessarily true. Because of federal laws and federal regulations and just some coercion and influence that people don't understand how they influence people. Some of it is kind of hidden, secretive. Almost every decision that your state politicians make is because of federal laws or federal coercion or federal grants.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're already getting some questions in the chat, and I want to go back to the benefit of secession in a minute, but people are already asking some hard questions, and I want to get your thoughts on them. So we have Kieran in the chat. Welcome back, Kieran. If this happens, I hope their immigration policy isn't as impossible as the U.S. is now. I will move from the U.K. in a heartbeat. So how would immigration work? Because Kieran lives in the U.K. He really wants to come here and live in here in New Hampshire. He can't even get into the flipping country right now because of the COVID regulations. How would it work for someone like him?
It's a great question, and I have a few different things I want to say. Obviously, if we were independent, the state government structure would remain the same. I would want to minimize the government power, but it would remain the same. We'd have dictator Sununu, we'd have our state houses, state senate, and executive council. If I'm not the governor, I can't make those decisions. I would hope it would be a very open immigration policy, but also have let people in who are not dangerous and can produce for us. For instance, a lot of other countries, including Mexico, ironically, if you want to move there and become a citizen, I think even if you want to just be there, you have to write a letter in Spanish convincing the Secretary of State of Mexico that you will be a net benefit to the economy, meaning you're going to work and not take welfare. So a net benefit. And this is for Mexico. Most countries in the world, and a misconception is immigration into the US is difficult in some ways. You can get visas, you can get green cards and resident status. That's kind of difficult. Citizenship is quite difficult. It takes, I think, at least 5 years and a few $1,000. But most countries in the world are a lot more difficult. I looked at a lot of other countries. It's 10 years, 15 years in some. Some you have to marry a person who was born there. Some you have to be born there. Otherwise, you can't even be a citizen. And it costs tons of money, and you have to have, obviously, a clean record. So we're talking about 15, 20 years. 5 years is, I think, on the lower side, lower than average in the US. So the US is very difficult for some visas. I don't have personal experience with visas. I'm a citizen. But visas could be difficult, I assume. Green cards could be difficult. My wife went from green card to citizenship a few years ago from the Philippines. It took her a long time. She was waiting for a visa from the Philippines for, considering her mother and grandmother, for a total of like 20 or 30, 35 years. She waited for a visa from the Philippines.
Wow.
So more than her entire lifetime, her grandma, mom, and her waited just for a green card. And then after 5 years, they got citizenship for the whole family. It did cost a few $1,000s. So it's difficult, not the easiest, not the most difficult. But yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. Obviously, Kieran is from the UK, so he probably knows about, he's probably researched some of these laws. Now, does it have to take 5 years? No, it could be closer to a year. If you're here for a year and you're working and you're not going to be a welfare drain and you're not going to be, a murderer or something, we would love people to come here. Even right now, another great point is just employment. People talk a lot about employment and immigration and unemployment. Do we need more workers? Right now, New Hampshire is booming economy. It was booming before the medical event that shall not be spoken about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get you in too much trouble with YouTube.
That's okay.
So the economy was booming. It was the hottest economy, lowest unemployment, highest median household income, lowest taxes, obviously. Dictator Sununu crushed it when he shut us down for a year and a half. He shut businesses, but still we're back, and we're back to doing almost as well as before. Every company in New Hampshire that I know of is looking to hire. They are hiring, and they are paying very, very nicely. Considering we have no state income tax and few regulations and low taxes, this is the best place to work. If we were independent, it would be like that, but infinitely better. Because when we attract employees from other states, from the United States, once we're independent, it would be like the same, but better. Because we'd have no federal regulations, so business would boom, and we'd have no federal income tax, corporate tax. So we could say, come here and you'll keep like 10, 20, 30% more of your money even than you do now. So business would boom by a trillion-fold. Think like Hong Kong or Singapore, multiplied by like 28 trillion. So business, the economy in New Hampshire is fantastic now. If we were independent, it would be light years better even, because just federal regulations costs $2 trillion a year in productivity. Because again, people may not know this. Businesses spend a lot of money hiring compliance officers. If I have a big business with 1,000 employees, I have to hire 17 lawyers, 15 OSHA compliance officers, and 45 HR compliance officers to comply with federal regulations. There's tons of red tape. And I don't know how to do it. I'm not an OSHA lawyer. I'm not even a HIPAA lawyer. I can't do these things. I'd have to hire lawyers. If I have a higher operating revenue budget, so expenses, I have to pay 1,000 lawyers in my company or regulatory agents. I have to charge more, obviously, and it costs me money. It costs productivity. So the total cost years ago was $2 trillion. But no more federal regulations means businesses can start and run with way less regulation. And if customers like them, they will make more business and do well. And it's that simple. So yeah, the economy would boom. We would need more workers. So we would be attracting workers from US and all over.
Well, I mean, that brings up a different question I have, and it's kind of related to Kurt's question here. He says, so it will require a citizenship process for New Hampshire and renouncing U.S. citizenship. So it's kind of like, do we have the industry to support seceding from the union and the consequences? Okay, so first off, let me back up. Like, what do you think the consequences would be of seceding from the union?
Negative or both positive and negative?
I think well, let's do negative for a second, because I mean, like, I suspect there would be some sort of response. I mean, we did fight, well, to actually to this tweet here that that was responding to the LPNH account earlier. There was a little historical event that established once and for all that no state can secede, period. Not to mention that the federal government would require all federal facilities and lands to be compensated, assuming they choose to surrender them. So would there be negative consequences, do you think, to seceding?
Yeah, of course. He raises 2 points. I'll address the first one first. The
Sure.
first one's not a great point, I don't think. He said the first time there were negative consequences, there was someone who was being abused by her spouse. Her husband was beating the crap out of her every day and
Hmm.
abusing her, and she tried leaving and it failed, and he caught her and beat her up even more. So would you tell her to never try to escape ever again?
Yeah,
Come on.
it's
It's
a
a, it's a
fair point.
ridiculous argument. It's just a terrible, terrible argument. As for the second one, what was the second one? The
Sorry,
federal
hang
lands
on.
and stuff. Yeah.
We'll bring it
So
back up. Yeah, federal lands.
again, one of the genius things to do that the federal government did over the last 100, 200 years, but especially recently, is they've taken massive amounts of land in every state. So I think every single state, I'm sure all 50, have federal land pockets. In fact, in the West, in Wyoming and Colorado, it's the majority. Wyoming, Alaska, Nevada, it's like some of these states are 70, 80% federal land. The federal government just stole the land. It's that simple. Obama, right before he left office, took massive amounts of land, like millions of acres, I believe. When Trump came into office, one of the great things he did, which was kind of unprecedented, is gave back the majority of that land, I believe, to Nevada and Utah. So there's an issue again with state sovereignty, with the federal government just snapping a finger under Teddy Roosevelt's whatever Conservation Act of 1910 or whatever he did. Teddy Roosevelt started this crap with conservation, and they take federal land, so national parks, reservations, maybe federal parks and mountains and all that stuff. So it's an issue in the federal government. We can't let them get away with it and give them a pass for stealing our land. They just stole our land, over the last few decades. So yes, right now, the White Mountain National Forest, right in the middle of New Hampshire, that's a national forest. So it's run by the National Park Service, federal land. If we left the union, obviously we would want to retain that land and not have the federal government own land in the middle of our state.
Right.
Would we compensate them? Maybe. Would we say, you give us the land and we won't make you pay back as much of the billions that you've stolen from us over the years? Because right now on the balance sheet, I think they actually owe us money. They've stolen from taxpayers, stolen from us, given us back a lot less, and they've been abusing us for years and costing us trillions in productivity. So again, would we have to pay them or they have to pay us? Maybe they would say we need to pay our part of the national debt, which again, it's not my debt. It was DC politicians who ran up all 28 trillion of the debt. But again, there might be some rebalancing. I don't know if someone would compensate the other, but as I'll discuss a little later in the show, money's not going to be an issue. That's the last of my worries. We're fine on money. New Hampshire, thank God, is very prosperous. We're doing fine. And for other reasons, taxes and money will not be an issue. There are other issues that concern me a lot more because we have ways of making money. Yeah, we'll get into that. And I've written a whole
Okay.
book about that as well. The money won't be an issue.
Excellent. Well, I want to address Kurt's question specifically. So would we have to like renounce our US citizenship? Would there be a citizenship process to immigrating to New Hampshire? How do you think that would work?
I have no idea. Again, I'm just one person, and I want to brainstorm this with other smart people like you and Kurt and everyone else over the next
Mhm.
year. And it would ultimately be up to the voters and all that. As long as there was a government, it would be up to the voters. If we're an independent nation, we could be one of the free small nations that's very open to people. Like within Europe, there's pretty free immigration. I think not a lot of borders and checkpoints and
Mhm.
passports necessary because of free trade. And again, like as I write in the Blueprint for Liberty, by the end of the book, it's independent, and eventually we weaken the government until we have total freedom, meaning zero coercive government. And at that point, I address immigration because it's a big issue. And pretty much what I say in the book, I'll give away the ending here. With immigration, conservatives and broadly people, individuals have, I think, 3 or 4 key issues. Number one, there's fear. They think if we have totally open borders, terrorists can come in through the border and harm us. Some libertarians, neglect that. I haven't been in the Middle East for 4 years. I know there are some really, really bad dudes. Taliban and Boko Haram are savages, and they will rape and kill you. It's that simple. And they would love to get in if there were open borders, and they probably do. So it is a real issue that we'll address, but it's not going to be a big issue for independent New Hampshire. Obviously, the Taliban is now $24 billion stronger now that,
Yeah.
again, DC politicians gave them weapons that you paid for. So again, that's one of the 82 reasons I have in the article. So if the terrorists were able to get in, we would have no laws restricting the individuals, private individuals like you and me, from self-defense. Right now, New Hampshire has essentially no restrictions on self-defense. So the only restrictions that apply to you and me are the federal ones. Once we totally cut ties to DC, there's no more Form 4473 NICS background check, no more NFA, no more regulation of suppressors and machine guns and bump stocks and SBRs. So we would have 100% freedom to defend ourselves. So, okay, a few Taliban people come into New Hampshire, try to take us over, see what happens. Not going to work. We have over 1 million people. We probably have, the majority of them probably have AR-15.
It's a lot of guns.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guns.
So the danger is not a real immigration issue for a free and independent New Hampshire. The next issue is jobs. People believe, a lot of conservatives want the government to, one of the roles they think government has is to provide us all with good jobs. And they say an inflow of workers, again, supply and demand affects everything, including the actual human resources, which is people, employees. So they say with a flood of employees who are willing to work for less because in foreign countries they can send money home and they have a lower quality of life and the dollar can do better for them. They're willing to work for $5 an hour as opposed to your $15 per hour. They'll come in, undercut our wages by sheer numbers, increasing supply of workers, driving down wages, but also they will accept a lot more money, a lot less money, so employers will hire them. To me, as a free marketer, that's not an issue. I don't care. If you lose, you lose. Sucks to suck, you lose. It is what it is. I'm not happy for my friend if they lose their job or they're undercut or wages go down, but it is what it is. A free market's a free market. Let everyone in the world compete. I'm fine with that. So again, I'm not going to be a massive protectionist. There was one other issue, I think it was welfare. The immigrants are coming in and getting welfare. Again, in a free and independent New Hampshire, welfare would not exist. So they'll come in. If they work, they'll eat. If they don't work, they will starve. Again, people will say I'm a cold hard capitalist. If they don't work, they'll starve. If they really can't work, and some people can't work. I know the left says a lot of people can't work. We have Medicaid. They want New Hampshire to keep expanding Medicaid and SNAP and food stamps and all that. There are some people who can't work. I think almost everyone can work, but there are a few people, probably 5 or 10 in the entire United States, who can't work. You know who can't work? Those with super duper severe mental retardation, like IQ under 50, they cannot work, which is extremely rare. And those with quadruple amputee, who have no arms or legs. Because if you have one hand, you can use a computer, right, to type. And like the majority of jobs, I think, are on computers. So with one hand, you can work. If you're a quadruple amputee, yes, you may not be able to work unless you can work in a phone center. But quadruple amputees and severe MR are very rare. But as we all know, I think, probably many welfare, maybe 99% are not quadruple amputees or MR. So yeah, welfare would not be an issue because it's not like immigrants would come in and take welfare from the system. We'd have no welfare in New Hampshire. Ideally, a free and independent nation would have zero welfare at all because it would have zero taxation at all. So again, that would not be an issue. So all the issues of, conservatives and others have with immigration, they're all 100% non-issues for a free and independent state.
I have another question about that in a second. I just want to acknowledge Nick H's super chat. Thank you, Nick. I'm trying to move there in the spring. Veteran truck driver wife is on board and is ready to homeschool our daughters via New Hampshire. So we're excited about that. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people lately that are moving to New Hampshire, and I'm really, really excited about it, which brings me to my question. It's kind of like, so we're in this place right now where, a lot of people are talking about a national divorce, and they're thinking about, if I'm a conservative, do I move to red states like Florida or Texas or things like that? And then of course the progressives are like California is their homeland apparently. Do you have any concerns that if we seceded, that would be so tempting for like a lot of these conservatives who are now just getting really fed up and they would flood our borders and take everything over? Because conservatives are fundamentally different than libertarians. They're fundamentally different.
I mean, there are a lot of ways I could approach that. I mean, I'm probably biased. I was raised conservative, like you said. I was raised very much conservative, pretty much mainstream, not super libertarian, not super authoritarian right. My parents and therefore me were skeptical of government powers and wanted freedom in general, but also respected authority and respected the process and the Constitution. I used to respect it back when I was conservative. So maybe I have a soft spot for them because I realized that just being, I moved to New Hampshire. By the time I moved here in 2017, I was already libertarian. I was not voluntarist, but I was no longer like conservative. I was involved in libertarian stuff officially, and I consider myself libertarian. Now, being around the people in New Hampshire, when I first got here, it was a shock. I saw people open carrying and smoking weed and doing all kinds of stuff. That was a shock to me. I went to Pork Fest. Oh my God. I'm like, these are super hippies. And I hadn't seen a ton of like really far leftists, some in New York, but like, it was really interesting, the libertarian vibe. Obviously, 4 years later, I am so comfortable around it. I'm one of them. I'm totally comfortable. And over the years being around them, I've shifted so much more libertarian, full voluntarist, but even socially, I've gotten so much more libertarian or liberal socially. So these people, what I'm saying is they've converted me a lot. If a conservative who has a brain, is willing to learn and is open-minded and is open, is just friends with people, it rubs off on you. I used to think anyone who does drugs is like stupid or bad. And now, I'm the biggest supporter of not of doing drugs. I still think it's probably not advisable, but like everything else, it's, risk benefit and risk calculation, and that's fine. I eat cheeseburgers a lot. If you smoke weed a lot, that's fine. We both choose things that are maybe not 100% healthy. I, drive a car fast and I do flips and I can get hurt. And I boxed, and boxing can get you injured. So now I'm a big fan of freedom from, drugs, tattoos, and driving and carrying guns and all this stuff. I think if conservatives move here, yes, they might want to pass certain things like banning drugs, but also let's look at the other side of if 1,000 conservatives who do support freedom move here, a lot of them by hanging out, if we accept them in our community, which we will, and they come out to these, libertarian place, the clubhouses and stuff in Manchester and the Seacoast, it rubs off on them over the years. It's rubbed off on me, my wife, and a lot of others. So they might just become libertarians.
And I hope so. And I do agree with you. There's something very specific about the libertarian culture that I've noticed. Cause like 2 years ago, I was still a Democrat. I was a Democrat for 20 years. Democrats have their own culture. And then I started hanging out more with the Republicans and like the MAGA crowd, and they have their own culture. But the libertarians, it's one of the most interesting things, because when I was at Pork Fest, I felt like I was watching how if communism worked in the ideal that the left thinks it does, that's what I felt like I was watching at Pork Fest. It was like all these people that were like, they were chipping in and they were helping out, and they were, but it was all because they were making the choice to do it. They weren't forced to do it. And it was a really interesting thing for me to think about. Like these people, these libertarians are like the polar opposite of what the left is. But I feel like that's what the left thinks communism would look like if it was ever done well. And I think the more that you're around that, it's so different than, and it's hard to almost explain, but just like the whole thing of like, you're voluntarily choosing to be a part of this. You're choosing the people you associate with. It's a really nice feeling. I can't think of any better way to describe it.
And that's all the concept of liberty is, right? It's just consent and voluntary decisions, and everyone decides what they want to do for themselves with no coercion of any kind. If you want someone to buy your product, convince them. I want you to buy my book. I'm not going to put a gun to your head. The government, uses policemen with guns to force you to fund their operations, and they claim you'll get a service in return. I say, here's my book. Here, flip through it. Here's a synopsis. Here's my pitch. Buy it or don't. I'm not going to use force. So yeah, I think it's such an interesting culture, like being around, obviously, libertarian meetups and Pork Fest every year, the last few years, and Liberty Forum. It's so hard to explain. Libertarians, there aren't a ton of us, obviously, we're the tiny minority, but a few thousand in New Hampshire, a few thousand activists, and everyone is different. Every single person is a unique snowflake. No two people are alike. My wife and I are different in a lot of ways. Obviously, I talk a lot. She's, pretty quiet, and she's a decent person. So we're very different. Every single person is extremely different. You came from liberal. I came from conservative. In my home, I'm extremely conservative. Out and about, you might be extremely liberal. Everyone is so different. If you go to, I was at the New Mover party the other day. It was full, maybe 200 people. Pork Fest, 2,500 people. It sold out. Every person is so unique, so different in so many ways. And in other contexts, they might not get along. But with something like this, everyone gets along so well. And I get along extremely well with almost every single libertarian. Like, I love them. I'm close with them. And those who are massive on like doing drugs at the time, I won't be around them if they're doing it. But I love hanging out with almost every libertarian. We're so different, but we all get along so well. It's a very interesting mix because we're fierce individualists, unlike the others, which are collective, especially the left, where we hate collectives. So it's really weird to see that paradox of collectivism and individualism. And like you said, we work together very well. We cooperate extremely well. But a lot of these movements and these protests, like we have protests every few weeks, they're very decentralized. And that's the key word with libertarian culture, especially in New Hampshire. Almost every project is decentralized, and being centrally planned has, some benefits and some disadvantages. But I think decentralization is so good for so many reasons. There's no one central point of failure. These protests are spontaneous, grassroots, and there are so many different groups. And for the most part, we work, besides for last Saturday, for the most part, we all work extremely well together, and everyone just gets along really, really well in the Liberty community, which is tremendous. The Liberty community in New Hampshire, for those who aren't here yet, we have like 15, 20, 50 different groups. The gun rights groups, the taxpayer groups, the low taxes groups, the homeschool groups, so many different groups, and we get together for a lot of different events and different legislation to support together. So we have tons of powerful groups here, and it's one of the reasons I love New Hampshire. And everyone watching who likes liberty should move to New Hampshire. It is going to be the last bastion for liberty, especially once we're independent.
No, I totally agree. So Naruto says, a tweet to look up after the stream. Zuby claims his phone survived a 6,000-foot drop while skydiving for a music video. I think Zuby, though a wonderful person, is a dirty liar. I do not believe his phone survived a 6,000-foot drop, but I'm open to being proven wrong. Guys, if you're enjoying this stream so far, please make sure you mount that like button. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. All right, I have more questions. So, do you think if we so did you see Jeremy on Tim Pool's show? Like, what was it, last week?
Yeah, I think I saw the whole thing.
What did you think about his argument that we should push for nullification over secession?
Yeah, I've heard it a lot, and I'm a big fan of nullification. And yeah, I remember Jeremy saying that. I think that they're so similar, they're essentially the same, and here's why. And again, I write this in the book. It's all addressed in the Blueprint for Liberty. Nullification, there is precedent for it. States have done it. On the left, California, and I think 30, 40 states have nullified federal immigration laws to some extent, and federal cannabis laws totally, because federally cannabis still, as of October 6, 2021, it's still, I believe, a Schedule 1 substance, which is the highest, most controlled level any substance the universe can have. Schedule 1 means it's, I think, addictive and dangerous and has no benefits medically, which are all wrong. So federally, it's illegal, but California and I think the majority of states now nullify those laws and say it's legal in their state. So there is a roadmap for nullification. On the right, over the past few years, I think a few states and I think like 2,000 counties have nullified federal gun laws in the past and present, and I think future as well. Now, ultimately, what's going to happen with nullification, ultimately, as soon as there's someone in the White House with enough guts to do it, which Trump did not, Trump threatened California, saying if they keep nullifying federal immigration law, he'll cut all funding to California. Because again, with grants, around half the funding for each state, I think, half the funding for New Hampshire comes from federal government. They steal our money with taxes, federal taxes. They give it back, but with grants, they get to influence us because they have strings attached to the money.
Give it back with conditions.
Right now with New Hampshire, the New Hampshire government is debating accepting a $27 million grant, but it'll tie us to their medical issue response with what's going on now. It'll make us totally obey them and assist them, including with quarantine and isolation camps. So, a lot of people are upset about that, and hopefully we don't accept the funds. But again, they stole the funds from us. They want to give it back. And there's conditions. So imagine if I stole $1,000 from you, said I'll give it back, but only if you come mow my lawn every day.
Well, they do the same thing.
How about you don't steal it in the first place?
No, they do the same thing with the schools, though. With the CARES Act, with the schools, they took our money and then they said, we're going to give this to the schools. Like, the government's going to shut down everything. The government's going to forbid there from being schooling, but we will give you these grants to manage the problem as long as you teach critical race theory, you integrate social emotional learning, and you do everything we want you to do.
Yep. And again, the federal government's been genius for decades. They've planned all this. They get their tentacles into everything, and they're so intertwined with funding. And again, one of the biggest things I hear, the biggest reservations people have with independence, because they love freedom, they love independence, they hate Biden, obviously. Let's go, Brandon. F Joe Biden. They hate Joe Biden. They hate DC politicians. But they say, what about the funding? The Speaker of the House told me, I spoke to him for a while the other day. Packard said, listen, half of our money, like $3 billion, comes from the feds. What would we do without it? And I'm like, come on. Simple logic. It's very simple. All that money is stolen from us. Don't give it to them in the first place. If you gave me money and I only give back some of it or majority, because some of it goes to overhead and waste and giving Taliban money. If I give back only if you do certain things for me, you wouldn't give it to me in the first place. So again, imagine if you kept all of your money, including $20,000, $30,000 a year you pay in federal income taxes. You wouldn't have to worry about getting it back because you wouldn't give it to them in the first place. Now, as for the question about nullification, and Jeremy and a lot of people talk about it, ultimately, I love nullification, but not for the reason you think. I love nullifying federal laws. We should nullify all federal laws. But ultimately, I don't think it's the end. It's a means to an end. Ultimately, it's the first step in the 3 steps of secession. Because secession is what all roads lead back to. Right now, if we nullify, let's say we pass something like, I think, Senate Bill 54 or 154 last year failed, it would have nullified past and present and future gun laws, or no, just future gun laws. Imagine we nullify federal gun laws and maybe federal taxes and other federal regulations. Ultimately, Biden, or the next president who's coherent, who has a brain, will say, we're not going to, if you keep nullifying our federal laws, we're going to cut off all federal grants. Then our state lawmakers will have a tough decision to make. Will you give in and bow and say, I'm sorry for nullifying, we want the funds, or will you say, we're going to double down? We're not going to obey your laws, and if you won't give us the money back, we won't give it to you in the first place. At that point, that's step 2 or step 3, because once you're not obeying their laws or letting them tax you at all, that is secession. That's practically secession. So I think nullification, eventually the feds are not going to let us get away with it. Trump did not quite have the backbone to withhold funding from California. I don't think he really withheld funding. He threatened to. But the left, as we know, they fight. They love fighting against freedom. Conservatives, there are no real conservatives in Congress, very few. So ultimately, let's say we nullify authoritarian things. The next Congress or president in a year or two will cut all funding. And then we're going to have a tough decision to make, and that'll be secession. So you see what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like nullification, it will lead to secession. So I love it because it's great, obviously nullifying federal law, but because it will lead to full independence, which obviously is the goal.
Mm-hmm. Do you think if we were to secede, like the government will like set up a border around us and have like checkpoints? Like how would that like make our just like if I travel a lot, how is this going to make travel for me more difficult?
I love traveling too, and again, that's impossible to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's a toss up. If we leave again, like we're working on peaceful separation. You know, I think the last few weeks I'm trying to use the term peaceful separation. We want a total peaceful, mature separation, an amicable divorce where we can still have open movement, free movement from New Hampshire back into the United States, which would be Vermont, Massachusetts, and Maine. Of course, Maine wants to get to the rest of the states. We would let them travel totally freely, drive through. Obviously, we don't care at all. No reason not to stop them. Massachusetts, come here, buy our liquor and fireworks. That's fine. You know, we love it. It's business. Vermont, same thing. Come in and, you know, buy our guns now that guns are getting more illegal. Magazines are banned in Vermont. So we would love free movement. I would hope, again, the ambassador for this movement, whether it's me or it wouldn't be Dictator Sununu, whoever is the ambassador once this happens, either the official or unofficial ambassador, would say, listen, let's be adults. I know it's hard for, you know, Biden and some DC politicians, but let's be adults. Let's allow free movement. Let's not bomb each other. We don't need needless death. Let's allow free movement. But your laws will no longer apply here, and we won't push your laws on you. So, you know, when we have people in Congress, you know, we're not going to try to pass laws for you because you're different and we should all govern ourselves. Again, everyone here knows, every person would admit California has a different lifestyle, a different way of life than Texas, different than Florida, Wyoming, New Hampshire, New York. I've spent time in all these places besides California, thank God. But I've spent time in Wyoming. I spent time in Florida. I have a lot of family and friends down there. I lived in New York for 10 years. They are different states. They are different cultures. Very different. In fact, New York and Wyoming are more different than like Germany and Spain. They're so different. They could not be more different. I can tell you tons of stories. In New York City, guns are 100% banned. Only police have them and criminals, obviously. In Wyoming, there are no gun laws, no permits, no restrictions, none. It's anarchy, right? When I was in Wyoming for a medical conference, I was talking to the other paramedics and I said, in New York, you can't have a gun. And they said, oh, you can't have a gun in New York, so you leave it at home? And I said, no, you can't have guns at all. And they said, so you don't carry it, you leave it at home in your car? And I said, no, you can't have guns. And they said, so you conceal carry or open carry? They couldn't understand. In Wyoming, smart people, paramedics and doctors, couldn't even fathom the concept of, in the United States, a gun being illegal. And in New York City, it's the same. In New York City, they say, what do you mean you carry a gun? Where's your license? And how big is your magazine? More than 10 rounds? And I said, there's no laws. In New York City, they don't get it. They live in a different universe. And for so many reasons, almost everything they see is polar opposite perspectives. They see, you know, low taxes as bad. We see high taxes as bad. They see gun freedom as bad. You know, everything is the opposite. We live in different universes. So how about we stop trying to control each other? Because I used to fight. For years, like other conservatives, I used to say, let's make California red again. Let's take over conservatives in Congress. Let's force them to be conservative. And then I've given up. I'm shouting till I'm red in the face. Why do I want to force Californians who are progressive, who want more social programs? Why would I force them to live in a libertarian kind of state? That's not right. If I don't want them to force their lifestyle on me, I shouldn't force my lifestyle on them. And again, this is something even I only learned more as I became more libertarian and ultimately voluntarist. Stop forcing others to live just like you. They're different and that's fine. People in California might really love high taxes. A guy might want to marry a guy. That's fine. Not my style. I married a woman, but it's totally fine. I love it. Go do it. If you want higher taxes, more welfare, I love it. I hope you're happy. I really do. But don't force it upon me and steal my money.
Yeah, and I've kind of come around to the same place. It's like, you know, it might seem odd for people, and you know, this is certainly a question I've had to answer. Like, how did I go from like a Democrat to a libertarian in like less than 2 years? But the fact of the matter is, like, our government has gone to shit. I've seen how the sausage is made in a lot of different areas. I've seen that conservatives are not willing to have the backbone to do anything at all. Like, I mean, God love them, they're very nice people, but they will not do anything. They will not do what's necessary. And so, like, this idea that we can fix the federal government is just, it is not a tenable idea. It's the same thing. Like, you know, I focus a lot on the schools. The school system is not fixable. This is not a problem that's going to be fixed in our lifetime. And frankly, I don't want to go through the rest of my life being told what to do by people I have absolutely no respect for, who are just out for themselves. I want to be left alone to be able to live my life the way I want to. And if that involves, me kind of accepting that some people want to live different than me, that's fine. I don't really care. As long as you're not bothering me and forcing me to do something, then you can do whatever you want. And to be quite frank, like, I actually think it would be kind of funny, just from like a reality TV show perspective, to deport all the progressives, like voluntary, to California, because that's all where they want to be anyway, and just watch what happens. Let's watch what happens when they build their little communist utopia. We can film it all, pull it on TV, like stream it on the internet 24 hours a day, and let's take bets on how long it's going to take them to completely sink their entire state.
Well, there is a new website. I don't know if you heard of it, progressivestateproject.com, and it's just that.
I did hear about this. Tell us about it.
Yeah. I mean, full disclosure, Dennis and I started it. We're not pretending to be progressives.
A couple of subversives.
Yeah, we're not pretending to be progressives necessarily, but we're helping to inform progressives who don't follow the news every day, because most people have lives, unlike you and me. They don't follow politics every day.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that New Hampshire is becoming less and less progressive, more libertarian, and it's kind of like becoming the worst place for progressives to be. If you love a lot of progressive values, you will be a lot happier in Massachusetts, New York, California, Illinois, Michigan. So I'm just informing them about all the stuff, especially the trend that's happened in the last 10 years, that New Hampshire is becoming worse for them and California is becoming better for progressives. So just explaining that to them. And if they were debating moving, they can find the state right for them. And we're going to have a lot of info on the site for the best states for progressives, depending on the issue they care about. If it's a strong public school system, strong drug freedoms, BLM, police accountability, if it's immigration protections, if it's social welfare, whatever it is that they like most, we're going to find the best state for them, and we're going to help place them in these states, like the opposite of the FSP, kind of. So another thing you touched on is the trend, especially as a paramedic. One of the most important things to me is the trend, because people say, we don't need to secede. Don't give up. Ollie, you're a sissy. You're giving up. You're running away. It's like, call me a sissy. I'm literally, boxed and fought in boxing matches. Guy's bigger than me, whatever. So you're running away. And I say, it's more of a Dunkirk. And Dunkirk was a successful operation. So it's not running away. They say, just fix it. Just elect better people. You just need to work harder. You're lazy. Just knock on more doors and elect good people to Congress and fix the federal government. We just need to make them obey the Constitution, shrink the federal government until they fit inside a tiny pocket Constitution, and just, invoke the 10th Amendment and all that jazz. Again, look at the trend. Over the last 240 years, every day, the federal government has gotten exponentially bigger, more powerful, taken more state sovereignty from states, violating 10th Amendment, and taken more liberty in the form of power from individuals, violating the 9th Amendment. I've written articles about it. I'm going to write a whole book about it later, how the Constitution is 100% meaningless, doesn't matter. As Lysander Spooner said it very nicely in one sentence, the Constitution either created this government that is tyrannical or has been powerless to stop it from becoming tyrannical. So the Constitution is totally irrelevant. I don't want to hear it ever again in regards to arguments for liberty or against secession. It hasn't done anything to stop the politicians. And I explain why in some articles, and my speech at PorcFest, I explain why. So look at the trend in DC. Every day, even though thousands of people want more freedom, obviously people like us around the United States, every day it's become more and more tyrannical. Why do you think that trend is going to change? When I, look at a patient and they're getting worse, the trend is what matters. If they're getting better, I'm happy. If they're getting worse, I'm upset, and I switch up my treatment protocol. I'll give them a new medication or I'll stop a medication. It's very simple. The trend is the most important thing in the world, especially in medicine. Trending. It's all about trending. The United States and every state individually is trending in the wrong direction. Now, Florida, mostly because of DeSantis, Florida might be trending in the right direction in some ways, maybe. New Hampshire, over the past 10 years, is consistently trending towards liberty. All the other 48 states are trending. And again, I've researched all 48 states. I have all the data on my site. They've been trending towards leftist authoritarianism. More gun laws, more taxes, more regulations, less freedom, less privacy, obviously, more Corona-Fascism. So New Hampshire, again, look at the trend. Right now, we are the #1 freest state. I've written articles about this. And all the important metrics, guns, taxes, freedom, education, economic freedom, we are the #1 most free state in the United States. We just are. We're also trending in the right direction. Also, with the FSP and the kind of legislature we have being so big, we are set up really well for continued freedom and expanding freedom and minimizing government. So for all those reasons, I think New Hampshire, I'm hopeful about. And like I always say, I think in 5 years, the United States, so federally, but also individual states, will look closer to North Korea or China, like full-on communism, or China has crony communism or venture socialism. we're going to look like China or maybe worse, like North Korea in 5 years. Every state, the only state that has a prayer of looking different is New Hampshire. And I explain why, because of all these reasons. So look at the trend in DC, and people say we need to fix DC. It's never going to happen. If you're a good person running for Congress, you won't win. I've gone through this. I've helped them in primaries. You don't win the primary. You don't win the general. If you 1 in a million miracles like Thomas Massie, a great libertarian, a real person, a human, wins, how many bills are you going to pass? How many bills has Thomas Massie passed in the past 10 years? I think
not
it's
a
zero.
lot.
Yeah, I think it's 0. So if you are good and you get through all the hoops and you win, you don't pass bills. Also, within a few years, you get corrupted. So Thomas Massie's been there a few years. He's not yet corrupt, but almost everyone else who goes in good, like Rubio and Cruz and Sass and everyone else who goes in as a great principled pro-liberty person, becomes corrupted or leaves or is ineffective as a legislator because they can't pass bills. As a legislator, you're effective by proposing and passing bills. Thomas Massie proposes a bill every year to end the Fed or audit the Fed, abolish the Department of Education, but they never pass, obviously. They're never going to pass. None of the federal government's never going to shrink. It's never going to shrink itself. A convention of states is never going to work because the delegates will all be from statist states and they're all going to be terrible. Utah will send Romney. Wyoming, the most free state, is going to send NZ and Barrasso, who get Fs on freedom rankings. Texas will send John Cornyn, or someone like Greg Abbott. All the best states, even Alaska, will send Murkowski. States that people think are pro-freedom to a convention of states, because I know a lot of conservatives think a convention of states will save us. It won't happen. We're never going to get 38 states, whatever, to sign on. Even if it does happen, almost every delegate will be a statist. The amendments that'll be passed and ratified will be only the worst amendments will be ratified by the states as well anyway. But even in your dreams, if it works out well, one federal judge, as we've seen, can block it. He'll say, unconstitutional, and block the whole thing. And conservatives who worship judges will say, well, a judge said it, so it's unconstitutional, so the whole convention is unconstitutional. So again, this is why we have to stop giving them respect. I hate the lawsuits in the Supreme Court. I hate when people they go to the Supreme Court, when they appeal to the Supreme Court and say, well, Texas v. White and this and that and the other, and Lincoln settled that and precedent. I don't care. Again, abusive relationship, I'm leaving. No, well, you can't leave because I said so. No, I'm leaving. Bye. It's that simple. Don't appeal to their sense of morality or law. We're leaving them. It's not necessarily a legal process. It's a leaving. Leaving is a natural right. If I'm abusing you, you are free to leave. It's that simple. If we have a divorce in a contract, it's most, divorces, I believe marriage traditionally says if you cheat, they can leave. If you abuse them, they can leave. Now people say the Constitution is a contract where a perpetual union, we can't leave. It's a contract. It's not. 240 years ago, I didn't sign it. My great-great-grandfather theoretically signed it, which is null and void. You can't sign a contract for your descendants, whatever. Even if it is a contract and I signed it, let's say I signed the Constitution and agreed to be under the United States government forever. Okay. Did the United States violate that contract? Yes. Millions of times. They violate every article of the Bill of Rights, obviously. Therefore, it's null and void, so we can leave anyway. So by any argument, we can leave. But again, it doesn't matter because we're being abused. We can just leave.
And this is something that I've really kind of come around to. And did you hear about Andrew Yang leaving the Democratic Party and what he's doing?
I saw some Democrats upset on Twitter about it.
So for people who don't know, Andrew Yang left the Democratic Party. And I have to admit, when I heard it, I was like, all right, Andrew Yang, maybe you're waking up. Like, who knows? Like, there's hope for all. I actually always liked Yang's gumption, if nothing else. I thought his ideas were at least interesting to consider, even if I don't agree with some of them. But then he put out this video yesterday where he was talking about his Forward Party, and he was talking about how, no one trusts people in DC, and the only way to get elected to go to DC is to appeal to the most extremes in the party, because that's how the primaries work. It's decided by the most extreme voters, and the only way to get out of it is to create this like third movement of like forward people who are going to come together and work together. And I'm like, and I wanted to I almost wanted to reach through the screen and like go like this to him. I was like, have you been paying attention? That is never going to happen. It is a nice fantasy. I get it, Andrew. It is a nice fantasy. But if I'm joining like a third party, it's going to be the Libertarian Party, because I want you the F out of my business. And the fact that you don't understand that this country is like irreparably split at this point, that people are not coming back because the media is constantly feeding them fear porn. And I see that on both sides. Like the conservative media does it, the liberal media does it. God knows the left controls a lot more of the media than the conservatives do, but it doesn't really matter because it's just like all fear porn, all talking points all day, every day. It is not possible to unbrainwash this many people. And it's like, I'm not necessarily like a full-blown anarchist by any means, but it's almost like we are not going to make any progress back in the direction that I want to go in unless we talk about things in the most extreme terms. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. I have a few points about that.
Sure.
First, I would say in this current system, we have protectionism from two parties. So they're never going to allow a third party candidate to get on the debate stage, meaning they're never going to win big elections.
No.
So as far as big elections, it's almost impossible to win because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. People think they can't win, therefore they don't vote for them. So yeah, I don't think any third party nationally will have a chance. Maybe in 10 years in an independent New Hampshire, Libertarian Party, which is doing tremendous, like actually raising money, getting billboards, amazing billboards in New Hampshire, doing things, getting involved on Twitter and doing things in person. So the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire might have some success down the line. But yeah, right now in any other state or nationally, no third party, not even Yang's Forward Party has a chance. I think, like he mentioned on Twitter, the founders did warn about a two-party system, and this is why. But again, in a big country, that's kind of the only way to be. Otherwise, you do split the vote of people, who do want certain policies. Now, as far as Yang, I like him too. I think he's one of the few Democrats or former Democrats with a brain. So I'll say he has a brain, which I rarely say for people on the left. Also, he has energy, and he is probably principled and sincere and doesn't waste a lot of time insulting conservatives or calling me stupid. He does focus on solutions, albeit wrong solutions. So I like him. I think he has a brain. Obviously, he's smart, trained business person, I think. So, and he's made, I think, billions. So I like him as far as that. But again, I don't want him to be ruling over me, of course. So I'm glad he left the party. And a lot of people are fans of his, which they should be. He's better than the other candidates for the most part. So, but yeah, I don't think that any third party is going to do well. But another point is you mentioned that no one's in the middle. I think there are centrists. I think there's a lot on the left, a lot on the right. There are a lot in the center, various types of centrists. Realistically, there are probably 10, 15, 20 broad ideologies, depending how broad or specific in the United States. Again, when you have 330 million people, you're gonna have not one or two, different types of ideologies. Right now, what Biden is saying, the uniter in chief, because he's so uniting, calling conservatives, unvaccinated people stupid, saying we're killing people. He's losing his patience with us.
We're domestic terrorists now too. P.S.
Oh, he called us that?
Well, so Merrick Garland issued a memo basically saying that parents who go yell at school board meetings are going to be considered domestic terrorists.
Well, how dare you want to, tell government agents how to educate your kids? They own your kids. The article I was working on right before we started the live stream is going to be the article I started years ago. I'm finally going to finish it and publish it. It's about how government owns your kids. And they just give you visitation at night and weekends. But think about it. They better be there Monday morning. And if they're not, CPS comes and they, will use guns to punish you. So you can see them nights and weekends, although they want to extend the school day and take them away on weekends, especially if you misbehave or don't get the thing that they want to put inside of you. If you don't get that, then your kids are taken away now. And, if you have guns, maybe they'll take away your kids. So yeah, the government owns your kids, but you can see them on weekends and evenings as long as you behave. So yeah, I think there are like 50 broad ideologies. And again, let the states be different and let everyone live with the people they want to live with. Right now, what they're essentially saying, the uniter in chief, is we are all one exact type of person. We are all progressives. And clearly everyone knows we're not all progressives. There are many types of people. And the left admits that around half the United States is, Republican or conservative or pro-liberty or not Democrat. Obviously, look at Democrat registration. It's not 50%. It's probably like 30%. So they say we're all the same exact person. We can all 330 million live under one set of laws, but everyone instinctively and, ideologically and statistically knows that's not the case. We're not all the same person. We can't live under one set of laws. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned, and we have a couple super chats I want to take, but you mentioned like the government owns your kids. You know what I saw today was that they're now restricting organ transplants to people who get the special magic medicine in their body. So you are literally not going to be able to get health care if you don't do what they want you to do. They're even restricting people donating organs if they don't do what the government
wants. Yeah, that's not
surprising.
Do. That's one of the less surprising things. I think with CMS, and I've warned about this years ago, with CMS, which is the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, they set for all the insurances in the U.S., even private, they set a lot of the laws and regulations and the rates. So they have tremendous control. But also because, I think the majority, maybe 50, 80% of patients in the medical healthcare system in the U.S. are, they're paying with primarily Medicaid or Medicare. So the federal government, the CMS in DC, which controls what is reimbursed and when, all they have to do is say they won't reimburse any care for patients, or they won't pay to hospitals who don't have vaccine mandates, or they won't reimburse for patients who don't, do the things we want to do with health. So they have a lot of kind of like power, purchasing power, because they are the primary payer. We almost have single payer healthcare. Because again, I think some big number, 80% or something, are, Medicaid and Medicare. The federal government has that power as well. Again, this is one of the many reasons why the only solution, we're never going to abolish Medicare. It's actually more likely, independence is more likely than abolishing Medicare. It's never going to happen. again, it's just too unpopular. So CMS, just CMS has so much power to control hospitals. If they tell a hospital they'll never get reimbursed for any patient ever again, if they don't do something, they're going to make that mandate, or they're going to do certain things. And this is one of the many ways the federal government influences even every single local hospital in the United States. And again, it's one of many examples how every business is no longer private. They're semi-governmental businesses. Every single business in the United States, besides for like the Liberty Block, we take cash, we sell t-shirts and hats. Other than that, if you are in the system and you're online and you accept insurances and you're involved with government regulations and you obey regulations because you don't want to go to jail, you are becoming more and more of a government entity, and the lines have been blurred a lot, and they're increasingly blurred.
All right. Derek says, I was reminded of Elliot's sentiments today, and I heard that lesson years ago. You can't force your answers on everyone. I would rather let the far left go in peace. Yeah, I kind of feel the same.
Excellent comment. And something Marcus Ruiz Evans, the president of CalExit, and he's on the left, and he's supporting CalExit, obviously, California secession. Something he mentions a lot is I'm not there, but I trust him. I believe him. He says people in California believe that if California voted for independence and passed it in a referendum, conservatives throughout the United States would say, no, please don't go. We love you. Don't go. We want you to be part of the union. We love you guys. Don't go. You know, we get federal money from California. And I keep telling him, no, conservatives in all the polls would love for California to leave. I think I made a t-shirt for Liberty Block saying, please, California, if you leave, we want you to go. We wish you luck. We will not fight for you to stay with us. You can leave and be happy. So that's another misconception. So essentially what we're asking with this bill, and again, we're hoping this bill passes and goes on the ballot. All we're asking is for us to leave. And if we leave, let us go. Don't kill us. Again, in a divorce, it's sad, but it doesn't work out. You divorce. What a wife might ask is, hey, husband or ex-husband, if I leave, please don't shoot me in the back. Let me leave in peace. It's a clean break. We can be amicable or whatever. We can have trade, but don't shoot me for just leaving. Again, people say we're insurrectionists, and I want to talk about a bill that calls us insurrectionists in a minute.
Oh, yes, we need to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're saying if you leave, it's insurrection. If you leave, you're rebelling. And I'm like, no, that's why we call it peaceful separation. All we want is to govern ourselves. And you know what the hypocrisy is? The United States, I believe, the federal government officially has supported independence movements around the world, right? Breaking up USSR, Catalonia, Spain, Taiwan. The official narrative, I know China owns Biden, but the official narrative is we support Hong Kong and Taiwan independence, probably, Catalonia, so many countries. We support self-governance. If people vote for it, Ukraine, Russia wants them to be part of Russia. Ukraine wants to be independent. We support countries being able to govern themselves. How hypocritical is it if we vote for independence peacefully by the legal way, we vote for on the ballot, and we leave, and then they roll in tanks and planes and try to kill us? Now, again, throughout writing the book, I actually went through the whole war games thought process exercise of how would a war work out. And throughout writing it, I actually became more optimistic because I realized a ground invasion by the federal government against New Hampshire would actually not work out very well for them. So I thought they could do it, but I thought out all the processes and how it would work. They actually probably would lose a war because they either have to nuke the entire New Hampshire, which would kill half the U.S., which they wouldn't do because DC would be killed, or they would go door to door on the ground, killing every person in New Hampshire, which killing them doesn't solve your problem. You lose taxpayers, but also it's a bad look. But also, you can't kill them. Again, like I said, we have 1 million people here with AR-15s almost. So you're not going to be successful coming to our doors.
I would think it would be a little bit like Russia and Afghanistan, right? It would be like one of those situations where Russia seems like the overwhelming superpower, but Afghanistan's like knows the mountains and they're scrappy and they have like, and they like, I think it would be an impossible battle. And it would look ridiculous. It would look ridiculous for the full power of like the United States military to come down on New Hampshire. Like, what message would that send to everyone else?
Yep. So all we're asking for is peaceful separation. We want to govern ourselves, and we wish them luck. We want to trade with them. We want to be peaceful. Want to have open movement with us and business and everything. Obviously, the federal government might accept that. The two options: they might accept it. They might not accept it. They might embargo us. An embargo, I believe, is internationally recognized as an act of war. So that would be declaring war against us. It's not super likely. It's also not super unlikely. They might do it. If they do, an embargo could hurt us. New Hampshire has farms, we have business, we have agriculture, we have industry, but still embargoes hurt. And it would hurt a small state for sure, no doubt. But hopefully they wouldn't embargo us. And hopefully if they do, Maine would trade with us, maybe Canada, maybe Vermont, maybe Massachusetts. But we're hoping for, again, a clean break, peaceful separation. We can still have relations and even maybe even military alliance, not a federal military, but alliance of as far as treaties. So that's all we're asking for. Now, what's funny is we've been doing all these discussions with, Mike Sylvia and just a group working on brainstorming strategy for how to propose a bill or ultimately we did a CACR, a constitutional amendment concurrent resolution. So it goes on the ballot and needs 60%, 66%. That's what we decided on. But in the strategy sessions, they were all very transparent, open. We recorded it all, put it up online on Odyssey. Some Democrats saw one of the strategy sessions, and they saw that we want to propose a bill for independence to put it on the ballot. And Bill Marsh, who's the newest Democrat, he defected from Republican to Democrat over the last few weeks, apparently because of Corona-Fascism, because he's so super duper disturbed that we don't want enough mandates. And he wants super duper mandates beyond even what Biden is dreaming of. So Marsh became a Democrat, and he proposed a bill that the title is Relative Qualifications for Office, but it was leaked from someone, apparently to me, that the whole language of the bill. And it pretty much says anyone who engages in insurrection or rebellion against the government is ineligible for office in the House or Senate. And it says in the definitions, for the purposes of this bill, anyone who even supports independence from the federal government or helps anyone in that regard will be considered to be guilty of rebellion and insurrection. So it's kind of like he's targeting Mike Sylvia for this bill and all the state reps who support it. And it says, even if you support even like the thought about it. So any state rep who says they might support independence ever, if this bill passes, will be thrown out of the House maybe and not eligible for office. So pretty funny. Mike Sylvia laughed when I told him about it when he found out. He said it's totally unconstitutional on its face. It violates free speech and a lot of other New Hampshire constitutional provisions. So it's not going to pass. In fact, he thinks that Marsh will withdraw his own bill very soon. So he thinks it has zero chance of passing, but I think it's a pretty funny shot across the bow because, again, the Democrats are threatened. A lot of people are very threatened by this.
Oh, the Democrats
target. It means it's,
the Democrats are so threatened by the Free State Project, by everything. And I told people all the time, like, I didn't realize when I left the Democratic Party, like, I thought the number one thing I could do to piss off the Democrats was to become a Republican. I thought that would be like, I'd be traitor number one if I did that. No, that wasn't the thing that pissed them off the most. The thing that pissed them off the most was when I started getting involved with the Libertarians and started like hanging out with the Mises Caucus and started like thinking about the Free State Project and stuff like that. They hate the Free State Project. There are state reps on Twitter that lose their mind on a daily basis over all of this stuff. I just think it's hilarious. And they try to insinuate that anyone that's involved in this, and some people involved in this grew up here. They were born here. They have never left here. And they try to insinuate that, they should get out of the state because they don't believe in any of this stuff. Like, no, you guys are in the wrong state. You need to leave.
Yeah, I mean, again, I hate being the person to come here and say, get out, it's mine now.
Yeah.
That being said, New Hampshire's always been pro-liberty. One of the reasons the FSP chose it is because it was already the freest state. So obviously, live free or die is our motto, although Dictator Sununu wants our new motto to be public health first.
Oh, God, freedom. We're gonna talk about him in a second. I have questions about that, but keep going.
Yeah, I want to talk about Dictator Sununu for a while, for sure. So it's a very pro-freedom state. And again, like I said, the trend is becoming more pro-freedom. And I don't want to be mean. I love my progressive friends. I just spoke to another one a few minutes ago. I love them. I'm friends with Marcus in California. Most of my friends in New York are pretty progressive. I want them to be happy. New Hampshire is the one libertarian state. The others are all Republican, authoritarian, or progressive. There are 49 other good options, or 30, 40 good options for them. I would love to help them be happy. Again, moving sucks. I've moved like 10 times. It sucks. Once they're there, they will be extremely happy. Instead of fighting tooth and nail just to try to pass the minimum wage, come on, progressives. New Hampshire has no minimum wage. So we have none at all. It's zero. If you don't want to fight just for an $8 minimum wage, if you want to be in a state that already has 15 or 20, a state that already is super progressive in every way, protects abortion up until birth and always will, has strict gun control laws, New Hampshire is not the place for you. You can fight your tail off and you're probably never going to win and you'll waste all your time. Or if you don't want to move the needle from here to here, if you want to be in a totally progressive state, move to California, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, so many wonderful states that are different types of cultures, all extremely progressive. You can look for and find the one for you. California, is a lot warmer than New Hampshire even. So there are plenty of great options. So, that's essentially what we're saying. I don't want to, kick them out. They can be here, but if they're not comfortable, I would help inform them about New Hampshire being terrible for progressives and other states being way better. And again, look at the trend. Look at how pro-liberty New Hampshire is. We have tons of new free staters. I met 10 more movers yesterday. So tons of people moving in and others are being activated who already lived here, natives who are being activated to support liberty. I saw another billboard on South Willow in Manchester by the highway, another billboard.
Really?
Liberty stuff. Yeah. So there are 3 or 4 or 5 locations of tons of different pro-liberty billboards in New Hampshire. We're the only state like this with libertarian stuff on billboards. So we have a very serious libertarian culture here, and it's not going anywhere. It's only getting stronger every day. And that's what I see on the ground here. So for progressives, yeah, I think they would be happier elsewhere. And it sounds kind of mean, but it is what it is. This is the one pro-freedom state. The other 40 can be more progressive, and that's totally fine.
So we have Microkernel who says, "Hi, Lou. I see your stylish UW hat. I've been a bit silent, but I'm working on things here in Wyoming, like I said I would." There you go.
Wyoming has a very special place in my heart. Obviously, I love Wyoming. Go Pokes! I love the Cowboys. To be honest, if not for Kate, like saying New Hampshire's closer, we would have moved to Wyoming. I love it so much. I think besides New Hampshire, if there's one state that has a prayer of being free in 5-10 years, it's Wyoming. For a lot of reasons, I've been there. I know people there. My brother lived there for a while. So I'm somewhat involved in this stuff. I have a bunch of friends there. We actually had a friend who was going to run for Congress. And I said, please don't. You're not going to win. If you do win, you won't be effective. Please run for state rep. And he ran for state rep as a libertarian and actually did decently. So, but at least now he's in the state and now he's in law school doing great. So Wyoming has a special place in my heart. I love it. I hope to visit again soon. Thanks for recognizing the Wyoming hat.
So I have a question. I want to get into Sununu, but I have one more question because I thought it was really interesting that you brought up like the California secession and how like you're kind of friendly with the guy that's doing that. Is there like a community of secession people that are communicating, and are there people on both sides, and do you guys all kind of play nice with each other because ultimately it seems like you have the same goal?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. So we actually have a website. So libertyblock.com talks a lot about independence. Our sister website, Americans United for Peaceful Separation, which is americansups.com, is a conglomeration, an unofficial group of people who support independence anywhere in the United States. And we try to track all the movements and coordinate and stay in touch. But yeah, unofficially or officially, we're all coordinating. I'm in touch with the Texas Nationalist Movement and CalExit. So I've known Marcus for, I guess, like 2 years now. So we go on each other's shows pretty often. Daniel Miller's been on my show from Texas twice. Marcus has been on my show at least twice from California. So we're in touch with them. California and Texas are the biggest movements, but every state has a small movement. There was, I've been in touch with 10, 15, 20 other state movements over the past few years. So we all coordinate. In fact, at PorcFest, the Liberty Block and TNM and CalExit, a lot of us had a panel at PorcFest. And it was, one of the bigger events there on the main stage in the pavilion. We had me, New Hampshire, my dad from New York and representing all of us, and he represents AUPS, CalExit via video chat, and Daniel Miller flew in from Texas for it. So we had an awesome panel there, and we're going to keep that going. At Liberty Forum, we're already working on another independence movement conglomeration of all of us coming together and working together because, again, we're very different. Marcus is on the left, Daniel Miller's in Texas, which is kind of different, even though he's pro-freedom. We're all different, but we can all share just strategy for what succeeds. Daniel Miller has an incredible organization. He's been doing it like 25 years. And he has a good infrastructure, a good email list. He has a great, beautiful website that he designed. And they have a great structure. They do petitions, signings in every city in Texas. Every other day, they travel around the state. And California does a lot of other California-type stuff. They're more lefty. They do a lot of interesting stuff. They have a lot of fun stuff going on. So we can share strategy. New Hampshire has this bill. We can help them propose bills. So we all strategize together and try to help each other for peaceful separation. And what's so funny is this. I love talking about unity through division or division through unity. It's an oxymoron or a paradox, but once you're not, trying to force each other using coercion, using violence to obey each other, that allows you to be friends. I love Marcus. He's a nice guy from California and he's awesome and he's my friend. If he was forcing me to, have his laws in California, I would hate him. But the fact that we are different, we're still in the same union, unfortunately, but we're trying to divorce. Once we divorce, like you often see with couples, once they get divorced, not living together, they can be way better friends. In fact, Dr. Cox and Jordan are such good friends. They love each other because they're divorced, right? They've been divorced for 10 years and they have a great relationship. It should stay that way. Marriage wasn't right for them. So once you get divorced, you can have a very amicable relationship. So I love the unity through division. Division can actually bring us closer because we're not forcing each other to live. If I forced you to live in my house and eat kosher and live like me and have no tattoos, you wouldn't like me very much.
Oh, no, right? I would hate you.
But
because I would probably stab you in your sleep.
Apart, you can be friends with me.
Yeah. No, I love it. And it's one of those things. It's like, I don't think people have gotten so tribal that I don't think they're looking for like, what can we agree on and how can we build from that? And it sounds like that's exactly what you guys are doing. There's obviously things that you disagree on, but you're focusing more on like, how can we agree? How can we help each other? How can we live together and not murder each other?
But ultimately, what makes this difficult, like Marcus and some people who support independence understand there's a difference. There's ideology, but you shouldn't force it on others. What makes this difficult, and this is the number one issue in the world for all of independence, the left and most on the right currently believe that one of their ideologies, the conservatives believe in low taxes and gun rights and all that. One of the ideologies is that we must use force to keep the union together. And that's an ideology they can't bend on. Like everything else, that's part of their belief system. On the left as well. Most people on the left and in the center believe, in all of the things they believe in, including union, perpetual union. It's forever. I won't listen to anyone who talks about breaking it up. So they say live and let live, but also they force their values on others, including this value of union. So, that's another issue that it's hard to explain. But, as a libertarian, it's natural. As a voluntarist, I believe I should never enforce any of my desires or values on anyone ever. But for the others, they don't have that libertarian foundation, so it's not in their DNA to want to have the concept of live and let live. And that's what makes it difficult to get through to people who don't understand that concept very much in their daily life.
Do you think there's a way to teach people that? Because I mean, like, again, like I focus on the schools, and the schools for a long time have been indoctrinating people into like a specific ideology that is all about authoritarianism and control and coercion and using force. And so we have a generation of kids who've grown up, and it is impossible for them to understand anything different than that because they've been learning this since they were toddlers. Like, is it possible to teach people this?
That's a great point. I mean, we can teach people to not be robots. But yeah, public schools or government schools, which is their real name.
Like government schools.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest problems. And my dad said decades ago, before I even understood, he said government schools are the biggest issue in the United States. It's why people are not for freedom. And I didn't understand it. Now I understand it. I've been saying for years, government schools need to be abolished, totally gotten rid of, or just all you could do is pull your kids out of school. I've been telling every person I've met who has kids for years now, pull your kids out of school. This was before CRT, disgusting sexualization of toddlers, and Corona-Fascism. Now we have three massive reasons that parents are standing up all throughout the United States and pulling their kids out of schools. So, it's fine that people are realizing they have to pull their kids out. But even before this, they were still pushing socialism, some racism, and some sexualization as well, even before the past few years. So but overall, just the indoctrination, making them into little robots, making them respect authority above all else. Even the conservatives love it, right? The Pledge of Allegiance, or the pledge.
Oh yeah.
To be like that, just forcing them to pledge allegiance every day to the government, saying I will obey the government and all that stuff. That's again indoctrination. So my wife and I decided a long time ago, when we have kids, 100% homeschool throughout, beginning to end, forever. They will never step foot in a government school ever. They just won't, because why give your kids to the government to indoctrinate? And again, it's the ultimate conflict of interest, right? Government agents indoctrinating your kids to support government, to support policies that grow the government and give money, bigger contracts, raises to school teachers, right? School teachers need a 10% raise every year, right? Medics don't get that, but school teachers need massive raises every year and benefits out the wazoo. So yeah, it's a conflict of interest. Obviously, they're educating kids, even in high school. We were told straight up, vote Democrat. Republicans are racist and Nazis and evil. I was told that very simply by teachers in school. So, I saw another tweet the other day of some teacher saying, veteran teachers, because she was a teacher, veteran teachers, we need to tell new teachers, it's not about teaching and cute projects. It's about activism. It's political. Teaching is political. He straight up said it, he said the quiet part out loud. So yeah, absolutely pull your kids out of school and work to eventually, diminish the system and eventually get rid of government school system. In the Blueprint for Liberty, one of the chapters is just like a new constitution, because it says why we have to separate, how we do it, and then separation. And one chapter is just the new constitution. Once you separate, then let's work on our own home state and let's make the constitution better. This constitution is a full-on voluntarist constitution. It's very simple. It has around 8 articles, military defense, welfare, schools, economy, whatever, right? Health. Every article is very similar. It says the government can't coerce people. You can't put a gun to people's head. You can't steal their damn money, and they will live freely. And anyone who tries to pass a law creating a government health system that dictates health will be hanged. So, anyone who, self-defense and property rights are absolute, and anyone who proposes to be part of the government or obstruct property rights or take away guns will be hanged for proposing a bill. It's that simple. Now, ultimately, the reason I love my Constitution, obviously I wrote it, the reason I think it's better than the current Constitution is the current U.S. Constitution has one fatal flaw, and it is the biggest flaw in the universe. There's no punishment. The Constitution is the one document that's supposed to restrict or limit what politicians can do, right? For the people and politicians. For the people, we have billions of laws. No one can count all the laws. We have billions of pages of laws. And there are punishments. Every law, I believe, has specific sentencing guidelines. 1 to 5 years in prison, a fine of $10,000 to $20,000. It's very specific. And we get punished. We go to prison if we violate laws. The government officials, politicians, have only very few laws. It's a pocket constitution this big. But they have no punishments in the Constitution, right? So when they clearly violate the Second Amendment protections of gun rights, they're not punished. When 214 Democrats, I believe, or 208 Democrats proposed HR 127, which bans all guns in the United States. It bans them all. 200 congressmen, were they hanged for proposing that bill that clearly violates the Constitution? No, there's no mechanism. There's no punishment. So for that one reason, the Constitution is 100% worthless. You can't have laws with no punishment. Oh, you violated the Constitution. So what? There's no punishment.
Who's going to enforce the hanging?
Well, that's what it says in the Constitution. It says, shall be hanged swiftly by anyone and everyone.
How is that not? Wait, how is that not mob justice? Hang on. How is that not mob justice?
It's incumbent upon all the people to enforce it. So again, it's not necessarily mob justice in that we would have total respect for property rights. Those who violate property rights will be dealt with accordingly by the people in general. So yeah, like you said, there has to be one thing. There is 100% anarchy, but not really 100% because there is something that is not government, it's governance. It's some structure and law. We only, like I think Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson said, this republic is only for a moral and decent people, right? We can't have animals. ISIS, it's not going to work out well if they're here. So only for a moral and just people who believe in property rights. So New Hampshire, again, I don't want to be statist, but only people who respect property rights will be welcome or will do well or be welcomed into the state. And if you respect property rights, that's all that matters. Respect others' rights. If you steal stuff from them, something will happen to you. Either you'll be shot when you steal, or some kind of recuperation will happen. Retribution or something. So ultimately, things will work out if you respect property rights, and the people will enforce it. And again, we do have some examples, like you said at Porkfest, it was a week or 2 weeks with Porkfest of total anarchy, zero laws, and it worked out very, very well. It's
so nice. It's the
tons
best.
of exchange with some fiat and crypto and gold backs and silver, and everyone cooperated extremely well. We had volunteer free aid there. We had other services, park rangers. It worked out very well. Cooperation, because it's all voluntary. Anyone's free to leave. And yes, once in a while there's an issue, and security, I think someone was removed by security. And things happen. So people will say, yes, but in anarchy, there might be some crime. And what if someone kills someone? Okay. Is there crime now? Yes. Go look up statistics in Baltimore, which is the opposite of anarchy. It's a communist tyrannical republic. So what's the paradigm? What do we have now? A lot of crime, homicide, 1 or 2 or 3 per capita per 100,000. So we have some crime now. In anarchy, would we have more or less? Without a government, I would argue we'd have a lot less crime, because everyone will be able to carry guns if you have no laws.
Yeah.
Everyone can protect themselves. So my mom, my dad, even in New York and New Jersey, could protect themselves. Right now, obviously, we see the correlation with statistics of homicide is almost 100% correlation with strict gun control. So once we have no more government, everyone can defend themselves from the few crazies. Because again, I'm a reasonable person. I understand there are some sociopaths who are psychotic, who might hurt people, and there are evil people like terrorists or other murderers or criminals who will hurt people. There are some, but again, they currently exist on Earth. We already have them. We have sociopaths. We have murderers. There are very high murder rates in New York City, Baltimore, Chicago, authoritarian places. Also, the biggest sociopath criminals who hurt people are all located in DC, and they all wear black with the little flag over here. So the biggest sociopath criminals are actually the ones running the whole show. So yeah, people say, oh, without a government, people will get hurt. Yes, people always will get hurt. I'm not going to pretend they won't. I think it'll be less than now, not more.
Yeah, I mean, I will say in regards to like Porkfest, I have never felt like safer at any major event as I did at Porkfest. And it's weird too, because again, like there are people walking around carrying giant guns everywhere you look. You throw a rock, you're gonna hit someone with a gun, and you probably don't want to hit someone with a gun with a rock, that's probably be a really bad idea. But also, like, you know, I mean, it was a campground and people would just like leave their stuff around and there was very little theft. And like there was just no problem walking around. Like I like one night I was stumbling around drunk. It was completely fine. And like everyone was like good to each other. Everyone helped each other out. And it's like, it's just, again, it's like, it's a weird, like, if people haven't experienced that type of thing, it's really hard to describe just how different it is from real life, from something that you might experience walking down the street in New York City or in Chicago or in Baltimore or any of these cities. It's just a completely different experience. I want to talk about Sununu though. Let's talk about Sununu, because I'm going to be honest, Sununu is on my shit list. Not for, I think, the same reasons as you, but I hate the man because he skewered the CRT bill. Like, we did pass some version of the anti-CRT bill, but it could have been so much better. And the reason it wasn't was entirely because of Chris Sununu, 100%. It was so stupid, and there was no reason for it other than him kissing up to the Democrats because he's going to run for Senate. What is your issue with Sununu?
No, I think I saw your video about it. It was a few months ago, how we had a decent CRT bill and he poisoned it or watered it down, and ultimately that was put into the budget and passed into law. So yeah, I mean, I think some others say that it's not that bad, say it still has some protections, but yeah, again,
those people don't understand how it's being taught in the schools.
Yeah, well, you know, and some of the teachers came out and said, we're going to keep teaching it. I don't care if it's illegal. We're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, that's a big issue. And again, that's par for the course in politics. I've written about a lot of these bills that get, that's a great bill. It gets watered down. So it's meaningless, so not worth the time to pass, or poisoned and becomes a bad bill. I've seen a lot of good bills become bad bills. So yeah, with the amendment process, they can obviously water down some stuff. My issue.
Well, you know what's funny? Let me. I want to talk about the amendment. I just need to complain for a second because they could have actually fixed the bill in the amendment process. They actually had the Keith Ammon, like we talked about, like there was one specific provision they took out of the bill that is like basically the crux of how they teach critical race theory in school. Keith Ammon proposed an amendment in the amendment process to fix it. It would have been fine. They didn't even consider his amendment because they were pissed off at him about something else.
Wow, that's pretty unfortunate.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that part. Well, my issues with Sununu are CRT, but mostly Corona-Fascism. I liked him before Corona-Fascism, and when he became a total dictator, and when he shut down the legislature, declared a state of emergency, even though, again, as a paramedic, I've been dealing with literally medical emergencies for 10 years, my whole adult life, my career. I've seen thousands of patients in New York. This was not a medical emergency, never was. Even if it was, after a day, by definition, it's not an emergency anymore. Go to the dictionary. Emergency has to be temporary, right? After a day or two or 16 months, it's not an emergency. So when he declared a state of emergency, and by doing so, he gave himself power, just like a certain other person in 1930 gave himself power over the legislature. And I'm not talking about FDR, I'm talking about Hitler, but they both did. So when he gave himself power over the legislature to pass laws unilaterally by emergency order, and he passed 86 emergency orders, which carried the weight of law, and contrary to what other people might say, yes, police will come to your house to enforce emergency orders. It's not a law. I don't care. If police come to your door, it upsets me. No. So he passed a lot of these laws, and he shut down businesses temporarily, and some never recovered. He shut down my gym. He said health, fitness places, those are not essential. Liquor stores, bike repair shops, those are all essential. You know, pretty much every store, Walmart. But a gym,
I was so mad. I was barred from going to because they knew I was traveling to do stuff with Walkaway, and they barred me from going to the gym because they knew I was traveling. I was like, F you guys.
Yep, and I wrote an article right when I did. You know, I messaged Sununu and his people, and I said, "Did you leave gyms off the list? Because the list is pretty extensive. It has like 50 different types of industries that are exempt, essential, and gyms are not essential. You know, considering that like obesity and lack of fitness is the #1 contributor to death. You know, heart disease, COPD, cancer, hypertension, obesity, diabetes. All of those things are mitigated by fitness. Fitness is probably the #1 thing you can do to improve your health. Why is it not essential? Because it's the most essential thing. So yeah, he didn't answer. So I wrote an article saying, you know, hitting him hard for that, for closing gyms. I had to jog outside to stay in shape. I didn't want to get too fat. So I was jogging along 3A and cars whizzing by my ear, you know, like almost hitting my ear. Scary stuff. So yeah, he shut down businesses. Some never recovered. The contact tracing for restaurants, disgusting violation of privacy. The mask mandates. What else did he do? He passed a certain law, executive order number like 74 or something. One of them I wrote about. Pretty much allows for any police officer, law enforcement, to go into private property without a warrant or informing the occupant, the property owner, as long as it's related to any potential medical issue, Corona-Fascism.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
So for any Corona-Fascist reason, like if they suspect that you're not wearing a mask or, you know, gathering people, they can come into your property and violate you with no warrant, no advance notice or anything, no knock warrant. So that was really upsetting. I wrote an article about that. I don't know if a lot of people heard about that, but yeah, a lot of really concerning things. Now what I guess is the cherry on top of all this is after 16 months of 86 executive orders, totally, again, shutting down the legislature, House, Senate, legislators passed legislation, which is laws. That's how it's supposed to work. He said, nope, doesn't exist. Let's pretty much abolish it for 16 months. No legislators pass laws. I am dictator, king, God. That's why I call him dictator. He became a god. Mm-hmm. So after 16 months of controlling businesses, micromanaging them all, he told me on Facebook, he was commenting some nasty comments on Facebook to me the other day from his personal account. He said, I would never regulate business. I never have, never will. I don't have the power to do that. And I shouldn't have the power to regulate business. I'm not a communist. If you want communism, Alu, go to China. He said that to me. So, and I said, but what have you been doing the past 16 months? What were all your executive orders about, if not controlling businesses? And he wouldn't answer. He said, nope, that's communist. I would never control business. I don't want to. I don't have that power, and I should not have that power. And I said, again, I linked him to it, like 10 articles I wrote about Sununu controls business. Sununu puts in contact tracing. Sununu closes non-essential business. Isn't that controlling business? In fact, shutting them down sometimes. So yeah, he wouldn't answer me. And then he said he won't control business because people were asking him to oppose the mandates of certain things that businesses are doing. And he said he won't step in to protect them from that because now he can't control business. So obviously it's not news that a politician is a hypocrite. But yeah, it was mostly Corona-Fascism. Also, he vetoed some pretty good gun bills. First time he did that. He's been good on gun rights. So also he, didn't want to support the budget, as if you were involved in the budget fight.
Oh, yeah.
If there was any state of emergency reform, meaning reform to take power away from a dictator during an emergency, like maybe let the legislature vote on whether to keep the state of emergency going and let the dictator rule as a dictator for months on end. If there's any limit the legislature can vote on to end the emergency, he didn't want any part of that. He wanted, whenever he declares it, he could be dictator definitely forever. So he gave up very, very little concession in the budget for that. So that pissed me off as well.
Well, and that was the thing that Keith Ammon, I think, spoke out about. And there was a quote from him talking about that. And that's why they didn't even consider his amendment for the CRT bill, because Sununu was pissed that he spoke out against it. It was so stupid.
Well, a lot of state reps spoke out about him. And I have a feeling the majority of Republicans in the House no longer support him. I hear from a lot of people, some tried to impeach him. They filed articles of impeachment last year. A lot of Republicans, publicly and privately, do not support him anymore.
Well, let's talk about that, though, because, what I'm seeing from the GOP now is they're all courting him to run for Senate. And this goes back to the reason of why government can't be fixed. Chris Sununu screwed this up 19 ways from Sunday. And now the entire GOP is courting him for Senate. Dan Crenshaw came and did a fundraiser. One of my supporters actually saw Dan Crenshaw at a Liberty event in Texas and was like, why do you support Chris Sununu? And Dan Crenshaw was like, well, New Hampshire is really a blue state. And so we have to. And I was like, F you, Chris Sununu. New Hampshire is not a blue state. That is a bull-faced lie. And it's like now you see all these GOP voters that are like, please, Chris Sununu, run for Senate. I'm like, why would you vote for this man? I don't understand.
Okay, a few thoughts. Number one, I hope he runs for Senate. I hope he loses, but if he wins, good. Let him go to DC. But he's in DC, he can't hurt me very much. He's a senator. As a state dictator, he can hurt me a lot. As a senator, good. We always get rid of our worst to DC. Notice we get rid of Shaheen, Hassan, Pappas. Let's send him to DC. That's better than being in the state. Now
I want him to lose out of pure unadulterated spite.
Oh, no,
I don't want to give him the victory.
Primary, I think he will lose. Again, if he's primaried by Baldock or someone, he probably will lose because he's so unpopular now. He's a good politician. He seems popular, but he's not popular. So anyway, people might ask, they say you want to be independent, but then New Hampshire has its own problems. You have dictator Sununu, who's obviously a tyrant. You have other issues. You do have 40, 25% are registered Democrats. So almost half Democrat as far as registered parties here, because 50% are independent. So people say New Hampshire has plenty of issues. How will that get better when we're independent? And again, like I said, for all the other reasons of immigration, independence, as we get more liberty, more libertarians come and more progressives leave. But as far as just the state dictator and politicians, once you're independent and there's no more pipeline from here to DC, and in New Hampshire, we're very familiar with it. Governors go to DC to be U.S. Senator after governor. That's what happens with Hassan and everyone else. So if there's no pipeline from New Hampshire to DC, governors will govern better. And here's how. Right now, Sununu, like you said, right now the decisions he makes are political based on what DC will think. Will this help me win the senator election? Will I get to the good parties and fundraisers in DC? Will Biden and Harris and others in DC like me? He makes decisions based on how DC will think. So right now, imagine again, like a couple, his eyes aren't on us, his partner, his eyes are on some other girl, right? Because he's trying to court her. He doesn't give a crap about us anymore. He's looking at DC, not New Hampshire. Once we sever the tie and there is no DC, you're not going from here to there, no pipeline, the governor, not him, he sucks. The next governor will have to look at us. It'll be like a more faithful relationship, more exclusive, because they'll have to look at us. We see it with Greg Abbott in Texas. He's had a federal PAC for a long time. He's running for president. Greg Abbott or can't win, but whatever. So he's not looking at Texas. He doesn't care about them. He's looking at, again, someone else, DC. What will DC think of me? What will Biden and DC donors and parties and stuff and all the other stuff in DC think of me? So once we sever ties, I think the governor will be a lot better when they govern based on how them and their people actually want them to govern, as opposed to what DC wants.
Actually, this is a perfect transition, because Starry Eyed Chloe said in the chat, why not move to Texas and be with Michael Malice? Why should people consider
New Hampshire and be with me? Yes, I actually saw a recent show, and he was talking to, I think, Kristen Tate, who I think is from New Hampshire originally. So yeah, he moved to Texas, and he was in New York City, I think, which is, again, bad. So Texas is an upgrade. But again, I've said for a lot of reasons, and we don't even have time to discuss all this, but New Hampshire is the freest state in the union, a lot freer than Texas. Texas is like middle of the pack. So yeah, it's big. So as far as independence, technically it's big enough, more so than New Hampshire. Then, so it could have better success in that regard. But overall freedom and overall government structure, like we've said with our 400 state reps, they barely get paid. They're all very small, public hearings for every bill. A lot of good reasons. Texas has none of that. If you don't live in Austin, you can't go from Amarillo to Austin for every hearing. It's like an 18-hour drive, right? So they don't have the same government. They have very few state reps. They're paid more. It's harder to get things done. And it's just less representative. It is. But also just overall freedom, the freedom and overall trend in Texas are going the wrong way. In New Hampshire are going the right way. So for so many reasons, New Hampshire is the freest state in every regard, and we are trending in the right direction. So Michael Malice, move to New Hampshire. I'll help you pack.
Yeah, I think that was a misguided decision on his part, but maybe he'll regret it at some point. So I think your analogy of like the governor looking the people in the eye, like I think that's interesting. Do you think Ron DeSantis is doing that in Florida, or does he have his eye on the White House?
That's a good question. It's a great question. I don't know. Again, I'm not in Florida. I'm not super close to him. I would say DeSantis is the most pro-freedom governor in the U.S. right now. If I still believed that the United States could be saved by a great president, I would 100% support DeSantis for president. He is as good as it gets. He's not 100% voluntarist, but he is really good. He has principles and he has balls. And unlike Trump, he's mature and he's an adult. So that's phenomenal. Right now, he's making, I guess, mostly phenomenal decisions for Florida. Corona-Fascism is the big one. He's fighting big tech. He's fighting a lot of crazy leftists. Is he looking at DC? Maybe. He might run for, obviously, he's probably the strongest.
He's losing weight. He's getting in shape. He's getting TV ready.
Yeah, he's probably the strongest candidate. So he most likely is. I mean, it's probably 60, 70, 80% chance he's going to run. And if he does, is he making calculations based on what DC wants? Maybe. It's hard to tell. I would hope, again, being optimistic, I would hope that he's making decisions that are pro-freedom, pro-Florida, and just good for people, which will help him both for governing Florida and DC. So hopefully they're not very different. Again, sometimes they're different types of policies. For Sununu's case, we want freedom. DC wants authoritarianism, and he wants authoritarian voters because he's a Democrat. So he's courting those people. DeSantis, especially in a primary, will need conservative libertarian support. So he is doing those things to get their support and because I think he believes in them. So yeah, it's a great question. He probably is thinking about DC, although it's far away. But I hope he stays in Florida, to be honest. I hope he stays in Florida, doesn't even run, and leads Florida to be independent. And he can be president of Florida once it's independent. Because again, Flexit has a movement. There's Florida secession movements. And again, like we see with Biden fighting DeSantis increasingly the last few weeks, they're at war. He should just say, screw it. Because Biden, again, like I said with nullification, Biden is going to cut federal funds to Florida. He's already cut shipments of monoclonal antibodies, I believe. So if he is willing to let people die in Florida, eventually they're going to have to separate and say, okay, we're going to be our own nation. Don't give us money. We won't give you taxpayer money. Again, I think Florida has no state income tax, right? So those people really could keep pretty much all their money if they could be independent. So again, there's a lot of people, increasingly every day, people in New Hampshire want to leave the union. So I hope DeSantis helps that. Now, Florida is interesting. Florida is one of the few states, the only state besides New Hampshire, trending towards liberty in most ways, I believe, largely because of DeSantis, but also Florida has different things. We have some activists, I think you and me, a bunch of activists are not massive, but we're good activists who love liberty. We have a lot of activists, thousands of activists. Florida has three tremendous pro-liberty voices. Ron DeSantis, obviously. Donald Trump, who lives in Florida now, who is one of the biggest voices for the somewhat pro-freedom conservative movement in the world. And Dan Bongino, number 1 or 2 or 4 podcast in the United States. He has a tremendous voice, one of the biggest podcasts in the world. He's in Florida. If all three of them and they're very close. If all three of them say independence, we need to leave the union, it'll happen, right?
Yeah.
They have tremendous influence in Florida. If all three of them say it, every single conservative and libertarian in Florida will follow, especially if they say independence, which is a great thing they believe in anyway. So I want them to do it. I'm trying to get through to those three. So Dan, if you're listening, or Ron DeSantis, or Donald Trump, if you guys are watching this, so I know you do have a big audience, please consider independence. If you three all pull for it at the same time, I think Florida could actually do it.
Well, you know what's funny is Trump has actually changed his residency to New Jersey. You know what I think that means? Yeah. I think that it's going to be a Trump DeSantis ticket.
Because they can't be from the same state. Yep.
Yep.
I thought about that. They're in the same state. It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, a Trump DeSantis ticket could do very well. But again, I would love it. Again, I think that they're the only two people on the right who have a backbone to throw punches. Trump threw some punches. DeSantis can throw some punches. And almost no one else does. Romney and McCain don't throw punches. They are Democrats or they're weak, spineless people. So I think they're both great. But again, I've just given up. I think even Trump and Pence could not save the country. They did a negligible amount, almost nothing, almost zero to save the country. They were great. They passed some great policies, great tax cuts. Like I said, Trump gave land back to Utah and Nevada, which is tough to do. The federal government bring land back to states. He did a few great things. They finally moved the embassy in Israel, which is a very big symbolic move. Every president for decades has been promising to do it. He actually did it. So he's done some real things. But again, in real practical policy, Trump essentially did nothing, right? Did he drain the swamp? No. Did he stop the national debt? No. Did he stop he put some good people on the courts, but even Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and Barrett are not totally pro-freedom. So overall, he did little to nothing as far as freedom in 4 years. And he was the ultimate outsider who had a backbone, who didn't mind hitting back. So Trump DeSantis, even if it were Trump DeSantis, Noam, even all three of them could not save DC. Even you and I couldn't save DC. And I'm the only person who admits this. You and I, as president and vice president, could not save DC.
No.
You can't eliminate the entire judiciary system. You can't eliminate all of Congress. You can't eliminate all the 400 regulatory agencies. You can't eliminate all the civil servants who are unfireable. You can't eliminate the deep intelligence state, the surveillance state. It's too difficult. It can't happen. So,
well, and here's the thing too, is like, even if we made progress on just like one sliver of one of those things, they would like assassinate us.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't even get that far.
Yeah, they would kill us. But there are too many. We have to pass 1,000 good bills. One bill to get rid of the NSA. One bill to get rid of the court systems. One bill to fix whatever, get rid of FDA. What's the chances of passing, 10,000 phenomenal pro-liberty bills in one Congress? Too much work to be done.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, again, like where I'm at right now is I think like national politics is fun to watch from an entertainment perspective. God knows, I think Trump running again would be the most entertaining thing in the world. I think he's already running. I think the ad that he released after the
His rallies never stopped. He can't stop rallying.
No, he can't stop. He loves it too much, and it's entertaining, man. And I love it. I'm gonna live for it. But they're not gonna actually do anything, and it's gonna be a constant for if he wins, and I think he probably would win with the way things are trending, but it's like even if he did, it's going to be another 4-year headache of screaming and crying and complaining and like the media sabotage again, and nothing's going to get done. It'll be entertaining, and that's fine. I have something to complain about on the internet, but it's not going to do anything.
Okay, let me finish with some optimism.
Okay, let's do it. White pill.
Because I'm a pessimist, but overall, I thought about it. I spoke to someone about DeSantis the other day, and they said that they might run in 2024. Or January 2025, the new president either will have reelected Biden or Harris or a Democrat, or we'll have an election of DeSantis or Trump, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to be polarizing. Obviously, it's becoming more and more polarizing. If Biden wins re-election, and that will be essentially a referendum on 4 more years of Biden-Harris. Conservatives, millions more will give up and say, we can't save the country. The country chose to re-elect them. We have no place here. We have to secede. Secession will happen. Texas or New Hampshire or someone. Again, a lot of state reps have said, I support it, but we're not there yet. Let's try to fix the country. If Biden wins re-election, some have told me I will support independence. So if he wins re-election, good, we'll be independent. If Trump or DeSantis, aka Hitler, according to the left, wins in 2025, Cal exit just might happen, right? So I think regardless of which side wins, the other side will have such a boom, so much fuel for their independence movement. It might actually finally start balkanizing the United States. So I think 2024, whoever wins, I think it's going to be a good thing for independence.
Well, awesome. Well, Alu, this has been a great chat. I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything more you want to add before we conclude?
Yeah, that's pretty much all. Because after one, thank you so much for having me. I wanted people to check out libertyblock.com, nhexit.us, nhexit.com, nhandependence.org, americansups.com. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook, and you can check out my books. They're all on Amazon. I'm with Defiance Press and Publishing now. All my books are on Amazon. If you are a conservative who thinks that we can save the country or there's anything we can do, please read my book. It's like $9 on Amazon. Find me in person. I can give you a copy for cheaper, maybe, or buy the ebook for like $2. It's called The Blueprint for Liberty, and that book will explain to you in every single way the country is trending in the wrong direction. We will never save DC or any state besides coming to New Hampshire and eventually being independent. That is the only way our descendants will ever have freedom going forward.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, guys. I put all of Alu's information in the description below so you can find his books and all that good stuff. Look him up, and hopefully we'll have you back sometime at some point, Alu. But thank you for joining me today. And guys, I have one more stream tomorrow. I think it's at 4 or 5 o'clock. I got to double check, but it's going to be with Frank McCormick, Chalkboard Heresy. I'm really excited about it. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.